Cook or starve. That's your choice. Her voice cut through the kitchen like a knife. I froze, spoon trembling in my hand, as the steam from the boiling pot rose into my face. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, stood in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, tapping one manicured finger against her elbow with smug rhythm. Her lips curled into a smirk, like she was savoring my humiliation. I felt the sting of tears press against my eyes, but I swallowed them down. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Not her. Not today. But Vanessa leaned forward, her glossy black hair falling over one shoulder. Her perfume, sharp, artificial, filling the space between us. And don't even think about telling Ethan. He'll never believe you. Ethan. My son. My only child. The boy I carried at 19, raised with every ounce of strength after his father walked out on us. The man I sacrificed for. Late nights, double shifts, skipped meals, just to see him graduate, succeed, build a life. And now that life included her, Vanessa, his wife, the woman who smiled in front of him and spit venom when his back was turned. I wanted to scream at her, to throw down the spoon and remind her that this was my kitchen, my house, before it was ever hers, that I had earned respect with every wrinkle on my face, every callus on my hands. But my voice caught, because deep down I knew she was right. Ethan wouldn't believe me. He never did. Every time I'd tried to explain, every cruel word, every little jab, he brushed it off. Mum, she's stressed. Mum, you're overthinking it. Mum, please, just try to get along. That's what he told me, again and again, until I stopped trying. So I stood there, silent, stirring the pot as if my life depended on it. The smell of onions and garlic filled the kitchen, but beneath it lingered something else, something sour. My own shame, my own helplessness. Faster? Vanessa snapped, glancing at the clock. Ethan's going to be home any minute, and you're not going to make me look bad. Not tonight. Not tonight. My stomach knotted. What was so special about tonight? Why did it matter so much that I cooked quickly, silently, obediently? I pressed my lips together, but the questions rattled in my chest like chains. I wanted answers, but I knew asking would only bring another sharp jab, another cutting remark. The soup bubbled angrily, spitting little bursts of heat that burned my wrist. I winced, pulling my sleeve down, but I didn't dare move away from the stove. And then the front door creaked open. My heart slammed against my ribs. Ethan's footsteps, heavy, steady, familiar. I froze, spoon mid-stir. Vanessa's smirk instantly transformed into the sweetest smile, her voice sugar-sweet as she called out, "Honey, you're home!" I didn't turn around. My hands shook. My breath caught. Would he notice? Would he see me here? Shivering over a stove, beads of sweat running down my back, my whole body tense like I was a prisoner in my own home. The footsteps grew louder, closer, then silence. I felt it. His eyes on me. "Mama?" His voice cracked, low, almost cautious. "Why are you shaking?" The spoon slipped from my hand, clattering into the pot with a splash that burned my skin. I gasped, but I didn't move. Couldn't, because in that moment, every muscle in my body went cold. He had seen, but would he finally understand? Or would this be the moment my son, the boy I had given everything for, looked at me, saw my pain, and still chose her? You need to understand something before I go any further. I wasn't supposed to live like this. My name is Diane. I'm 60 years old. And if you had told me years ago that I'd be standing in my own kitchen, treated like a burden by my son's wife, I would have laughed in disbelief. Because my whole life, I fought tooth and nail to build something out of nothing. I was 19 when I had Ethan. His father, my high school sweetheart, was gone by the time Ethan turned 3. Left us for another woman. I still remember the night I found the note on the kitchen table, folded neatly beside an empty coffee cup. "I'm sorry, Diane. I can't do this anymore. I didn't have time to cry. I had a toddler clinging to my hip and a pile of bills on the counter. So I worked. Day after day, night after night. I cleaned offices at midnight. I flipped burgers in the morning. On weekends, I sewed clothes for neighbors just to scrape together enough to buy Ethan his first pair of sneakers that weren't from the thrift store. I used to whisper to him at night when he was small, "One day, baby, you'll have everything I never did. One day you'll live the life I could only dream of." And I meant it. So when he grew up strong, smart, and ambitious, I thought my sacrifices had finally been worth it. He got into college on scholarships, graduated with honors, and landed a steady job in finance, the kind of job that gave him pressed suits, a shiny watch, and weekends at wine tastings I could barely pronounce. I was proud, so proud. And then he met her, Vanessa. She was stunning, I'll give her that. Chestnut hair styled in perfect waves, lips painted red like she had stepped right out of a magazine. She was 10 years younger than Ethan, a yoga instructor with a social media following, always dressed in designer clothes that looked effortless but cost more than I made in a month. The first time she shook my hand, her nails dug into my skin just a little too tight. Her smile was wide, but her eyes, icy, calculating. Still, I told myself, if she makes Ethan happy, then I'll make peace with it. But happiness wasn't what she brought. The red flags started early and I ignored every single one. At family dinners, she'd roll her eyes when I told old stories. When I brought Ethan's favorite casserole, she'd wrinkle her nose and whisper, "So heavy. We don't eat like that anymore." She once even joked, in front of friends, "Ethan's mum is sweet, but she's kind of old-fashioned. Doesn't really fit in." I laughed along, pretended it didn't hurt. But when I went home, I cried into my pillow like a little girl. And Ethan? He never noticed. Or maybe he chose not to. Because every time I tried to gently point out how she treated me, he'd brush it off. "She doesn't mean it, Mum. She's just stressed with work. Please, just give her time. Give her time." But time only sharpened her claws. When I sold my house to move in with them, yes, my own decision, because Ethan swore it was our family home now, Vanessa's smile nearly cracked her face. She told me I'd always have a place with them. But the second the papers were signed, I noticed how she started rearranging everything, the furniture, the kitchen, even the family photos. Mine disappeared from the walls, one by one. And then came the rules. "Diane, don't use too much detergent. It ruins the machine. Diane, if you're going to cook, you need to make it healthier. Ethan doesn't need all that butter. Diane, can you please not tell Ethan about this? He doesn't like conflict." It was like death by 1,000 cuts. Small humiliations stacked on top of each other, until the weight nearly crushed me. I tried to stay quiet, to convince myself I could endure it. After all, wasn't this what mothers did? Sacrifice their pride for their children's happiness. But every day, I felt myself shrinking. Until one night, when Vanessa's mask finally slipped in a way I could never ignore. It was late. Ethan was away on a business trip. I was folding laundry when I overheard her phone call. Her voice was sharp, angry, hissing through the walls. And what I heard made my blood run cold. I can still hear her voice from that night, slicing through the thin walls of the house like a dagger. "Yeah, he has no idea," Vanessa whispered into the phone. Her tone was sharp, smug, dripping with contempt. "His mum does whatever I tell her. She's basically my maid. And the best part, he thinks she chooses to help." My knees buckled. I sat down on the edge of the bed, a pile of laundry tumbling from my lap. The shirts, the socks, they scattered across the floor, but I couldn't move. My chest tightened as she laughed. A low, cruel laugh that didn't sound like the sweet woman she pretended to be in front of Ethan. "She's pathetic," Vanessa continued, "always looking at me like she wants approval. Like, get a clue, lady, you're in my house now." My house. The walls seemed to tilt, My breath came fast, shallow. I pressed a hand over my mouth to stop the sob rising in my throat. I wanted to storm out there. I wanted to rip that phone from her hand and scream, "This was my house before you. I raised Ethan without anyone's help. I bled for this family." But I stayed frozen, silent, invisible in my own home. Because what if she was right? What if Ethan really did see me as a burden? What if all my sacrifices were just background noise in his shiny new life? The phone call ended with her laughter echoing down the hall, and I sat there in the dark, surrounded by unfolded laundry, staring at the floor like a woman who'd lost everything. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, she acted as though nothing had happened, cheerful, humming as she blended her kale smoothie, asking if I could iron Ethan's shirts before his trip ended. I nodded, my throat raw, my eyes burning from sleepless tears. And it only got worse. She started snapping at me openly. "Don't put too much salt in the pasta, Diane. Why are you wearing that old cardigan again? It makes the house look depressing. Do you have to sit in the living room while I'm recording my yoga videos?" I became a ghost in my own life. Careful, quiet, until the day it all boiled over. It was a Tuesday evening. I remember because the sun was setting, orange light flooding the kitchen. I had been stirring soup for nearly an hour, sweat dripping down my back. Vanessa leaned against the counter, scrolling on her phone, barely glancing at me. "Faster," she said without looking up. My hand trembled. "I'm trying," I whispered. She looked up then, her eyes narrowing, her lips curling into that familiar smirk. "Then try harder. You're so slow, Diane. No wonder Ethan always feels stressed when he's home. You make the whole house feel heavy." Her words hit me harder than a slap. I felt something inside me snap. "Don't you dare talk about me like that," I said, my voice shaking. Her eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Then she leaned closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. "Cook or starve." And she shoved the grocery bag toward me, the sound of cans and vegetables crashing against the counter. I stood there, stunned, my hands clenched so tight the spoon nearly broke in half. And that's when the front door opened. Ethan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Mum? Vanessa? I'm home." Vanessa's face changed in an instant. The smirk melted into a wide, sugary smile. She smoothed her hair, fixed her blouse, and called out sweetly, "Honey, you're just in time for dinner." I froze. Would I tell him? Would I finally reveal what she'd said, what she'd done? Or would I stay silent, let her win again, and keep shivering in the shadows of my own home? The footsteps came closer. My son's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway. His eyes landed on me, sweating, trembling, gripping the spoon like a lifeline. And for the first time, I saw confusion flicker in his face. Concern. "Mama?" he asked softly. "Why do you look so scared?" Ethan's question hung in the air like smoke. "Why do you look so scared?" My lips parted, but no sound came out. My chest rose and fell in short, shallow breaths, and the spoon rattled in my trembling hand. Vanessa slipped into the silence like she always did, swift, polished, manipulative. She let out a light laugh, brushing a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. "Oh, Ethan. She's fine. She just gets overheated when she cooks. I told her she should sit down, but you know your mum. Always fussing." Her voice dripped with sweetness, honey laced with poison. Ethan's eyes darted between us. I could see the confusion on his face, the doubt tugging at him. For a moment I thought, finally, he sees it. I took a shaky breath. "Ethan, I—" But Vanessa cut me off, stepping closer to him, laying a hand on his chest like a protective wife. "Don't worry, baby. Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you go wash up? You must be exhausted from work." Her smile was so wide, so convincing, I watched the concern drain from his face in seconds. He nodded, kissed her cheek, and gave me a quick glance before heading down the hall. And just like that, The moment was gone. I wanted to scream, to grab his arm, shake him, make him see. But the words stuck in my throat, heavy as stones. Vanessa turned back to me, her smile vanishing the second he was out of sight. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and cutting. "Don't you ever try that again," she hissed. "He's mine now. You had your chance to be his whole world. Now you're just extra. Extra." The word stabbed me deeper than anything she had said before. I clenched the counter to steady myself as the room spun. She brushed past me, humming a tune as if nothing had happened, leaving me there with my shame and boiling soup. But the collapse came sooner than I expected. It was that weekend. Ethan had invited a few colleagues over for dinner. Vanessa was determined to show off. Her perfectly decorated dining room, her organic menu, her homemaker charm. Except she didn't lift a finger. I cooked. I set the table. I ironed the tablecloth. All while Vanessa floated around the house, sipping wine and arranging flowers. By the time the guests arrived, I was exhausted. My hands raw from scrubbing, my back aching from bending over pots and pans. "Wow, Vanessa, this spread looks amazing," one of Ethan's colleagues gushed, eyeing the roast chicken and homemade bread. Vanessa flashed her movie star smile. "Oh, thank you. I worked so hard all day." The words slammed into me like a truck. My jaw tightened. She was stealing my work, my effort, my pride, and passing it off as hers. I waited for Ethan to correct her, to say, "No, my mum did all this. She always takes care of us." But he didn't. He just smiled, proud, as if she had truly done it all. And then, the disaster. Halfway through dinner, one of the guests complimented the bread. "This is so soft. Vanessa, you'll have to give me your recipe." Vanessa laughed, waving a hand. "Oh, it's a family secret. My grandmother taught me years ago." My stomach churned. That recipe wasn't hers. It was mine. It was the bread I'd baked for Ethan's birthdays since he was 10. The heat in my chest grew unbearable. I felt my face flush, my hands shaking under the table. "And then," I snapped. "That's not your recipe," I blurted out, my voice louder than I meant. The table fell silent. Every head turned toward me. My heart hammered in my ears, but I pressed on. "That's mine. I made that bread. I made all of this dinner." The air went heavy, like the room had run out of oxygen. Vanessa's smile froze. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. Ethan's colleagues exchanged awkward glances. One cleared his throat, another coughed into his napkin. "And Ethan?" Ethan's face hardened. "Mum," he said slowly, his voice firm, warning. "Why would you say something like that?" I stared at him, my mouth dry, my heart shattering into pieces. Because in that instant I realized the truth. He didn't believe me. Not at all. The silence at that dinner table still haunts me. I had spoken my truth, loud and clear. But instead of support, I felt the walls close in. The clink of silverware stopped. The laughter evaporated. And Ethan's glare burned into me like fire. "Mum," he repeated, sharper this time. "That was uncalled for." I felt my throat tighten. My palms grew slick. I wanted them to know." But Vanessa jumped in, her voice trembling with well-practiced fragility. "It's okay, Ethan. She didn't mean it. I'm sure she's just tired." Her wide eyes shimmered with fake hurt, like she was the victim. She reached across the table, resting her manicured hand on mine for the performance. "I don't mind sharing credit, Diane. I know you helped." Helped? The word seared me. I hadn't just helped. I had done everything. The guests shifted uncomfortably, offering forced smiles, trying to drag the evening back to life. But the tension lingered, thick as smoke. By dessert, nobody was really eating. Nobody was laughing. And when the door closed behind the last guest, Ethan exploded. "What the hell was that, Mum?" His voice was sharp, loud enough to rattle the glasses in the cabinet. "You embarrassed Vanessa in front of everyone." Embarrassed? I stared at him, my voice trembling. Ethan, I cooked everything. She, she lied. She said the bread was her grandmother's recipe, but it was mine. You know it was mine. Vanessa gasped softly, pressing a hand to her chest like she'd been stabbed. Ethan, I never claimed. Don't, I snapped, the anger finally boiling over. I heard you. I heard every word. Her face flickered for just a second, the smirk threatening to break through her mask, but she quickly replaced it with tears, big crocodile tears that slid down her cheeks. Ethan, she whispered, voice cracking. I don't know why she hates me so much. My heart dropped. Hate? Ethan turned to me, jaw tight. Mum, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this has to stop. And just like that, I was the villain. The days that followed were worse than anything I could have imagined. Vanessa knew exactly how to play her cards. She started whispering lies into Ethan's ear when she thought I couldn't hear. She criticizes me constantly. She makes me feel unwelcome in my own home. I think she resents our marriage. One afternoon, I caught her on the phone with one of Ethan's aunts. Her voice was low, conspiratorial. I'm worried about Diane. She forgets things. She gets angry out of nowhere. I don't want to say dementia, but dementia. The word echoed in my head like a curse. She wasn't just painting me as difficult. She was painting me as unstable. I wanted to scream, to rip the phone from her hand, to expose every cruel word she'd ever spoken. But when Ethan came home that night, he looked at me differently, suspiciously. Mum, he said gently, too gently. Vanessa told me you've been under a lot of stress. Maybe you should see someone. Just to check, you know? A doctor. The betrayal hit harder than a slap. My son, the boy I'd raised through hunger, sickness, loneliness, now looking at me like I was broken, like maybe I was losing my mind. And Vanessa stood behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist, her head on his shoulder, watching me with a smile so faint I knew it was just for me. A victory smile. The walls of that house felt like they were closing in tighter every day. I avoided her, but she always found ways to corner me, leaving lists of chores taped to the fridge, making snide comments in passing, acting sweet the second Ethan entered the room. I felt trapped, powerless. Until one evening, when I overheard something that changed everything. Vanessa was in the living room with Ethan, her voice hushed but firm. We need to talk about the house. I know it's technically in her name, but she's not, well, if she really is slipping, maybe it's time to get the paperwork in order. My blood ran cold. The house. My house. The one I had sold my soul to keep. The one I had signed over jointly when Ethan begged me to trust him. She wasn't just trying to push me out of the family. She was trying to erase me. I barely slept after overhearing Vanessa's scheme about the house. Her words kept replaying. Maybe it's time to get the paperwork in order. She wanted me gone, not just from Ethan's life, not just from the dinner table, but from the very roof over my head. For days, I walked around in a fog, waiting for the axe to fall. Every time Ethan's phone buzzed, I wondered if it was her whispering more poison into his ear. Every time the mail came, I feared legal documents would be tucked among the envelopes. But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Not after everything I'd sacrificed. Not when she was plotting to take the last piece of my dignity. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was a Sunday afternoon. Ethan had just returned from a jog, his shirt damp with sweat, his cheeks flushed. Vanessa trailed behind him, perfectly styled, despite claiming she'd gone with him. I was in the kitchen, folding a stack of dish towels, when I heard her. Ethan, we can't keep ignoring this, she said, her voice firm but soft enough to sound caring. Your mum isn't well. She's paranoid. She lashes out. Last week, she accused me of lying in front of your colleagues. If we don't act, she could ruin everything you've built. Her words sliced through me. Paranoid? Lashing out? I dropped the towel. That's enough. I said, stepping into the living room. My voice trembled, but I didn't care. You will not lie about me in my own home. The room fell silent. Ethan froze, his eyes flicking between us. Vanessa's lips parted, then curved into a trembling smile. Diane, please, she said, her tone laced with fake pity. We're just worried about you. I laughed bitterly. Worried? You've done nothing but belittle me since the day you walked through that door. Ethan raised a hand, his brow furrowed. Mum, let's calm down. No! The word shot out of me before I could stop it. My hands shook, but my voice grew louder, stronger. I will not calm down, Ethan. Not when she's trying to make me look crazy. Not when she's trying to steal this house out from under us. His eyes widened. What are you talking about? I turned to Vanessa, glaring. Tell him. Tell him what you said. About the paperwork. About how I'm not well enough to handle things anymore. For the first time, Vanessa faltered. Her perfect smile cracked, her jaw tightening. But she recovered quickly, shaking her head. Ethan, that's not true. She must have misunderstood. She's been under so much stress. Stop lying. My voice shook the walls. I heard you. With my own ears. And don't you dare twist this anymore. Ethan looked at her, confusion flashing across his face. Vanessa, did you say that? She laughed nervously, reaching for his arm. Of course not. Baby, you know I'd never… But this time, something in his expression shifted. For the first time, doubt crept in. I stepped closer, my voice breaking but fierce. Ethan, I raised you alone. I worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. I bled. I starved. I gave up everything so you could have a better life. And now she wants to erase me, to make you believe I'm weak, unstable, worthless. But I am none of those things. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and unstoppable. I am your mother, and I will not let her destroy me. The room crackled with tension. Vanessa's face flushed crimson, her mask slipping for the first time. She turned to Ethan, her voice shrill. Are you really going to believe her over me? After everything? She's manipulating you, don't you see? But Ethan didn't answer. His jaw clenched. His gaze lingered on me, then on her. And in that silence, I saw her panic rise. For once, the control wasn't entirely hers. Vanessa's eyes darted wildly, her voice cracking. You know what? Maybe this isn't working. Maybe your mum should just… leave. The words hung in the air like a final blow. But instead of breaking me, they lit a fire inside. No, I said, my voice low but steady. I'm not leaving. Not this house. Not my son. Not my life. Vanessa's mouth fell open. Ethan exhaled slowly, his shoulders heavy. And then he spoke words that made my heart stop. Maybe it's time I heard everything. From the beginning. Ethan's words echoed in the silence. Maybe it's time I heard everything. From the beginning. Vanessa's face drained of color. She wasn't expecting him to say that. Not after months of spinning her web, feeding him lies and turning him against me. For the first time, she looked cornered. My chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. But I knew this was my chance. Maybe my last chance. So I told him. I told him about the insults whispered when he wasn't around. About the phone call where she mocked me, calling me her maid. About the night she claimed my bread recipe as her grandmother's, humiliating me in front of his colleagues. And finally, about overhearing her scheme to take the house. Every word spilled out of me, shaky but unstoppable. Ethan's expression shifted as I spoke. Shock, anger, confusion, and finally something that looked like realization. Vanessa tried to cut in, her voice desperate. She's exaggerating. She's twisting everything. But Ethan held up a hand, silencing her. His gaze locked on me. Mum, why didn't you tell me sooner? My heart cracked. Because every time I tried, you brushed me off. You believed her over me. My voice broke. And I was afraid. Afraid that if I pushed too hard, I'd lose you completely. The tears I had swallowed for months spilled freely now, running hot down my face. For a moment, Ethan stood frozen. Then he turned to Vanessa. "Is any of this true?" His voice was low, dangerous. She faltered, just for a second. Her eyes darted to the floor, then back to him. "Of course not, Ethan. She's jealous. She can't stand not being the center of your life anymore." But Ethan's jaw clenched. I knew that look. It was the same one he had as a boy when he caught a classmate lying. His eyes narrowed, sharp, cutting through her excuses. "Enough, Vanessa." The words landed like a hammer. Her mouth fell open. "What?" I said enough. "I've ignored the signs for too long. I wanted to believe you, but I know my mother. She's never lied to me. Not once." The blood drained from her face. She stumbled back a step, her voice rising. "You're really taking her side? After everything I've done for you?" Ethan's voice cracked with anger. "What you've done for me. You manipulated me. You disrespected the one person who sacrificed everything for me. You tried to steal the house she worked her whole life to build." Vanessa's hands shook. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, her mask had shattered completely. And then she left. Stormed out the front door, slamming it so hard the walls shook. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. My knees felt weak, like I might collapse. Then Ethan turned to me. "Mama?" His voice was soft, almost broken. His eyes glistened with tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have believed you." I tried to speak, but all that came out was a choked sob. He stepped forward, wrapping his arms around me like he hadn't done in years. And for the first time in so long, I felt my son, not as the man torn between two lives, but as the boy I'd raised, the boy who once clung to me when storms shook the house. We stood there for what felt like forever. The days that followed were messy. Tears, apologies, hard conversations. Ethan confronted Vanessa directly. Divorce papers came soon after. The house? Safe. My name remained on it. Untouchable. But more than the legal battles or the shouting matches, what mattered most was this. Ethan saw me again. He finally understood the truth. And me. I found something I thought I'd lost forever. My voice. My strength. Because I realized something important. Silence is not survival. Silence is surrender. And I was done surrendering. Today I wake up in my home with peace. No one snapping orders. No one making me feel small. Just me, my garden, my coffee, and the freedom I thought had been stolen. And Ethan? He visits often now, alone. And every time he thanks me for never giving up on him, even when he couldn't see the truth. Would I ever forgive Vanessa? No, not for the lies, not for the cruelty. But I don't need revenge. Her absence is victory enough. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let anyone erase your worth. No matter how small they try to make you, your truth will always shine through if you find the courage to speak it. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories.